ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between.
He's a South Texan poppy poet living that hashtag middle class gay life. It's Chibi.
She's a little bit Selena, a little bit J-Lo, and a whole lot of Pisces. It's Rocky.
And this is Words and Shit,
the show where you get to know the person behind the poetry.
Brought to you by Write Art Out.
Raquelita.
Hi, friend. How you doing?
Can I call you Raquelita? I don't think I've ever done that before.
No, but you know what? I love it when my friends call me Raquelita. And it is basically, I think Raquelita is a level of like intimacy that I know that, wow, we're really friends for you to call me that. So I love it when friends call me Raquelita. So definitely.
I'll take it. We're friends. Yay. How are you doing? Because I know the school year is wrapping up for you. How are you doing?
I am so looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this time of rest. I think it's just been like nonstop go, 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 and so many different changes within this like last couple of months. A lot of self-reflection of like what I want to go into next year, who I want to be, and almost kind of like sunsetting different parts of who I am in my workspace of this year, of like past years as well, and trying to move forward right in this time of rest for me.
That metaphor right there, sunsetting parts of myself. I call dibs on that phrase because that was brilliant.
I mean, I can't take credit. It's just like it's a professional term that I've been hearing that my coworkers like, oh, we're sunsetting programs instead of like ending programs. It's like we're sunsetting them, and I was like, that's amazing, right?
It's kind of like this gradual just coming to a close. I love that. Yeah. I love that versus the all of a sudden kind of ness of it, you know. And I love how you said that it's like go, 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 go until it's not, you know. And it has me thinking of, for those that don't know, I work as a makeup artist sometimes. The past 10 years. And I constantly have this conversation with like brides where it's like, okay, for the past however long you've been planning this, it's been go, 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 go. And now kind of like sunsetting the end of it. It is like, we're here. It's the day. Let go and let God, right? All these kind of like projects and moments in our lives that take up so much time and so much planning. And then they happen, and then that's it, and then you move on to the next thing, right?
Exactly. And it's okay to let go. I think people are so scared of like changes or hold on to these concepts that they're old parts of themselves. And it's okay to say like this part of yourself no longer serves you, right? And then you can be grateful for it. You can grieve it, but also welcome in something new, right?
Exactly.
So how about you? Like, I know that, you know, we were talking about me, but how about your season? How's this like fall coming along for you? And
I mean, I think it's always a never ending process of things. I just applied for a job, which was a lot of go, 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 right? Like the cover letter and the research and the resume and all that. And it's like, throw it out there. And then it's out in the universe. You know, there's nothing I can do anymore for it. And that always brings me back to this idea of writing, right? And the process of writing poems, the process of writing books, when you're prepping for competitions or when you're prepping for publications, it's like there's so much work and so much effort and so much time that goes into putting something together. And then the moment happens, whether it's the competition or whether it's the book release or whatever it is, the moment happens and you now have zero control over what happens after this.
Exactly.
And we say all of this because I am so excited to welcome our guest today, which, speaking of endings, this is the last show for the season where we will have a featured guest.
I know.
We'll have one more show.
One more.
But this is the last time we're having a featured guest. So our last featured guest for this evening has been in this process of go, 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 produce, get it ready, do all the things. And now we'll be publishing their first full-length collection in next year. Kemi Alabi is the author of Against Heaven, selected by Claudia Rankine as the winner of the 2021 Academy of American Poets First Book Award. Their poems and essays have been published in The Atlantic, Poetry, Boston Review, Catapult, Guernica, Them, the BreakBeat Poets Volume 2, Best New Poets of 2019, and other places. Selected by Chen Chen as the winner of the 2020 Beacon Street Poetry Prize, Kemi has received a Pushcart Prize, Best of the Net, and Brittle Paper Award nominations, along with the support from MacDowell, Tin House, and Pink Door. They've performed their work across the United States for schools, universities, museums, libraries, theaters, conferences, festivals, protests, and so much more. Y'all, if you're watching live and you aren't already hyped for this, please throw some love in the comment section for our featured guest this evening, Kemi Alabi. Welcome to the Words and Shit stage.
Hey!
I'm so excited to be here. It's fun watching y'all banter. I just kind of wanted y'all to keep going. And then I was like, oh shit, no, too. Yeah. Hey.
If you want to see that, that will be the entirety of next week's show.
Right? I'm so
Basically.
excited.
I know. I'm just like, yeah, because we really haven't time to like full on banter. We have like a 5-minute like banter, but we just really want to get to know the the poet and everyone. So we're so glad that you're here. Like I said backstage, what a wonderful glowing smile. Like even right now, you just like popped in. It was glowing. Yes, look at these cheekbones. Look at this smile. Look at this like green and like
look at this skin, this melanin is just
hilarious. Because
the radiation.
The poems. Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to get into it with you because like I said, your presence already. I had a long day. You look like you told me that you had a long day too. So did Chippy, and sometimes especially like when poets come in and I don't really know them, but your energy is already giving me energy, and it's gonna be a good show, y'all. It's gonna be a good show. So with that in mind, we'd like to start off with asking, our guest, how's your heart today? How's your heart today, this week, this month, this year, friend? We just want to know and like do a little quick check-in.
My heart is in a state of surrender. It's just kind of like, you know what? It is fall, which at one time, maybe in my youth, was a like glorious time to look at the trees turning colors and frolicking through piles of whatever. But now I'm just like, it's dark. It's cold. Summer's gone. That's where I got all of my power. And now I'm fading into the abyss. Winter is around the corner. I live in Chicago. And so it feels like it's just lurking around the corner this winter. And, it's another pandemic fall and winter, right? And so I have had to learn how to move with the seasons and accept the inevitable of what's happening. So my heart is in a place of surrender. It's like, this is not what I want. There's a clear shift that the environment is having that impacts the body, impacts the mind. And I have to flow with the seasons. That's just what we are all called to do. So that's how my heart's doing. I was like, I could struggle against it, but you lose that battle. Nobody wins that. So what does it mean to start to turn inward during this time, to accept the change that inevitably happens, and to move with those cycles instead of resisting them? Surrender is the word for sure. Do I get to ask y'all how y'all hearts are?
I mean, if
you have one ask us before.
I'm
Go for it, Chibi.
Oh,
you're like, no, thank you. You can pass.
my heart is in a state of urgency. The world keeps spinning, and bitches got shit to do. Bitches got to do shit, because ain't nobody waiting for bitches. It's me. I'm bitches. And so, urgency is kind of where my heart's been, of just kind of like, okay, go. But then allow yourself moments of rest. Don't be mad at yourself when you have to take a break. So balance, fine. Trying to maintain that balance. Yes, that is where How dare you? Okay. Rocky, how about you?
I would say that my heart is in a state of emergence right now. So I'm thinking a lot about my coworker and I, we've really been talking about Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Murray Brown, and what it means to be present in this emergence, right? Like coming into yourself, whether through your environment, through your organizing. And I think that parts of me have been really suppressed, or I've lost myself. So I'm again emerging to a new me, really, right? And shedding these things that no longer serve me, and kind of being okay to let go of the heaviness, of the frustrations, and just willing to be empowered and welcoming in things that will serve me and things I deserve. So I'm excited.
I love this. I hear this connective tissue of like release, surrender, accepting rest, like this need for kind of pause and release points across the board.
I mean, we're all in our 30s here. I feel like this is a common theme for people in their 30s of just kind of like, okay, there's a new level that we're getting into, and that does require surrender. That does require work in a certain direction, and that does require the embracing of what we are becoming. And I can't get. We are so going to dive into this topic.
No, I know you're talking about your 30s, and I was like, wait. Can you tell us your sign? You know, because we know that we're our signs. Yeah.
Oh, like big three at least, right?
Yes.
So, okay, Sun is in Leo, but it's in my 8th house. So like, you know, that's a little different. And then Capricorn rising.
Ooh, okay.
Scorpio moon.
Oh. Okay.
Right? If you go to full natal chart, I'll send it your way. I can rattle it off.
That's a whole nother interview.
Yeah. I was like, now I know how to like, all right, let's how we're navigating. Okay. I have a moon in Leo, so let's do this. Let's go.
Okay. So
my moon's
you're
in Capricorn.
more Leo than me, right? I feel like the moon and the rising signs are the true indicators of self, right? But you know, I'm also in denial about my Leo sun.
We'll see about that. My moon is in Capricorn, so I feel like we're all connected somehow. We're good. But this idea of surrender, I do want to dive into that later in the show, especially because you are in a state nearing the phases of surrender with your new book. We will get there shortly. But we do like to open up by dipping, even though we've already kind of like dived into deep conversation, we want to dip our toes for anybody that's just getting to know you for the first time, because full disclosure, outside of the research we did for this show and the work that we've read of yours, like Rocky and I are getting to know you really as a person for the first time today. So we start off with a segment called Speed Dating. We will ask you a series of questions. Feel free to answer them as in-depthly or as concisely as you feel is necessary to justify your answer. So question number 1, what makes you feel the most empowered?
Ooh, I feel the most empowered when I'm anchored in my desire of all types. It can be very like thinking of Audre Lorde's The Erotic is Power, what it means to be really rooted in that sense of the erotic in all senses, not just in the sexual sense, but really when I feel an embodied sense of my desire, where my yes and my no feel clear and distinct, I'm like, I can do anything. You know, that's when I feel most empowered, when I'm anchored in that place.
Ooh.
I'm going to have to connect with my root chakra right now.
Right? I'm like, shall we move through some exercises? So that's, again, another conversation.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is amazing. Okay. Again, okay. So my question, I've been having this question like really been thrown at me and my like some of my friends too. But what values align with your being?
What values align with my being? Well, I think because of how we described where our hearts are, I am really valuing rest and a sense of time that is slow and unforced. Forced nothing is what I've been repeating to myself. What does it mean to flow with time? To you know, who Virginia Woolf said it, I think. I'm rooted, but I flow. And that is how that's the underlying idea, value, ethos that I want in my actions and in my thoughts. What does it mean to you know, and I'm also really loving these movements that we're seeing here in the United States. When we think about the NAP ministry in China, the Lie Flat movement, there are so many people who are rebelling and resisting this like hyper-capitalist society, and by pausing and resting and refusing to work until we die, crash and burn, right? Reclaiming our time and our rest as something that we deserve. And so bundled, maybe the core of that really is just like a revisiting time and urgency, anchoring in rest, and listening to what the body needs, which is never the go, go, go or the do, do, do. It's a different sense entirely. So there are a bundle of values there, but that's really where I've been trying to root.
Never mind being dust in the wind. Can we be reeds in the breeze, please? Okay.
Reeds in the breeze. Yeah. It's on this call. Okay.
All right. My next question, and we were talking, you said you've seen some of these episodes, so you know this question is coming. What is your favorite food dish to eat?
I have been, this is going to sound really basic, but this has been my pandemic MVP. Like I survived on this like practically alone for a while. It's peanut butter. It's just peanut butter. Peanut butter on apples, on bananas, on toast. Like, listen, I did not come from a family that could throw down in the kitchen. We were a microwave meal family. So like I'm slow to whip up things. And so when and like cooking, though it's something that I've learned to enjoy, is not the primary activity that like is going to get me going. I'm like, if I need something to eat and I need it in a hurry, peanut butter is going to be there for me, and it's gonna give me the protein I need to get through the morning. It's like any time of day, it's available to you. It's like just unscrew the jar, stir, get out that spoon, do what you gotta do. So I know it's kind of basic, but you have to respect the staples, and peanut butter has been there for me like no other food has.
I love it though, because like I love peanut butter, and my dog has peanut butter. Like she's right here with me, and her ears were like peanut butter. Like it's that
interspecies appreciation.
Yeah,
it brings us all together.
Y'all and my husband are best friends now officially, because that is his like number one food group. So yes,
it's versatile. Yes.
Oh man. All right. So this is my last question, or this is our last question for the speed dating, but because it's definitely not my last question for the show. So if you could pick like either a song lyric or like a favorite quote that embodies your life, what would it be?
Wow, that embodies my life. Well, I've lived so many lives. That's real. Like, the chaotic versions or the peaceful, like grounded versions. I mean, I think just because it's so on my mind and I've been saying it so often, and it's an epigraph in my book, I've been thinking a lot about Tourmaline's words. Tourmaline is this brilliant Black filmmaker who, during the uprisings in 2020, tweeted something that is a borrowed phrase from other abolitionist organizers, but the way they put it was so succinct, and I've carried it with me in my work in life. And it's when we say abolish police, we also mean the cop in your head and in your heart. Yes. And I find myself in a almost daily process of interrogating where some of my motivations are coming from. And we've internalized so much bullshit. We've internalized so much that keeps us self-policing and policing others and unable to imagine beyond the constraints that have been given to us. And so when I ground in those words, I have a lens to evaluate my actions and my motivations, and to be able to do that untangling on a personal and interpersonal level, so that I may also contribute to it on a systemic level as well.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that is untangling and tangling. Yes. I feel like I already love this conversation. We're just only on the speed dating. We haven't even gotten to your poems.
I know, right? I'm like, can we just start unpacking right away? No, we cannot. We cannot. That is just a little taste of the conversation that we're going to dive into. But we want to open up, as we normally do, with a poem. For anybody that's watching out there, again, live, please use the comment section. We monitor it. We're excited. You know, Ayo Kunle Falomo, friend of the show and former guest, is definitely hyped for today's conversation. So show some love, interact, ask your own questions. Maybe Kemi says something that, you know, like, or it's like, wait a second, I want to know more about that. Ask your own questions, and we'll relay them. But first, let's get it going with a poem, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. And I'm also really excited to read for y'all, because I actually just last week got the galleys for my book. So I'm holding an uncorrected proof of Against Heaven. And this is the first time I'm going to read from it. I was like, dang, I don't have to have like printed off pieces of paper or use my computer screen. It's a whole new day. So because I've already mentioned both of the epigraphs, the tourmaline quote and some of Audre Lorde's Erotic is Power, I think I'm going to get started with the first poem in the book, which is yeah, it's a favorite of mine. I love that I got to start the book off this way. It's a poem called How to Fornicate. 1. After killing your God, hotbox the gun smoke. Cough out any vestigial prayer. Remember that spooky shit old boy hissed mid-smite, bullet plowed, curling away. It's true. You belong to the fire now. 2. Lose your Bible. Book of napkins to fold so the hungry busy their hands. Stop circling garden gates for scraps when a harvest splits your hips. 3. Your booty a whole altar call. Sickle-pitched hallelujah, blessed queers are born screaming. Become the most honest song they will ever sing, or the worst, or both, or never mind. 4. When street preacher rebukes your thighs, TV after school specials your mouth, Adam tweets, fuck that nappy-headed rib splint, Snake primes the bite you die inside, say, my own, my own, my own, my own. 5. Choir everything. Tenor the roses, alto the mulch, mezzo the flies, bass your bed, mountain they go tell on. 6. Disenchant the talismans of gods you love and leave. Spit flesh back to wafer. Left swipe eyes you caught and kept. Feed them to the crosspire, blood rewarming. 7. Remember Genesis. The worlds and little deaths you build with just your breath and hands. Silhouettes that singe the walls with new maps to salvation. Till even the floorboards buck and cry, Jesus. Even the windows blush and say amen.
Woo! Wow. 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 That is, wow. That's,
I love that you
go for it.
Yeah, that you start off your book that way, and then we're starting off the show that way. I know I can speak for Raquel when I say we both love fornication, so this is a great way to get going.
Oh my goodness. What a way. And I'm really thinking about, you know, you're talking about Audre Lorde's, you know, Power in the Erotic. No, that's not what it is called, but yes. Yeah, right? Power in the Erotic? Yes. Yes. It's not been a while. It has been a while since I read her essay. But it is so empowering, right? Because when you were talking about it, even though you're bringing in like these religious aspects of it, because it is like our bodies are holy, especially to be queer, to be a person of color who's queer, to find the erotic in ourselves. It is a holy experience, right? And so within that, like that first poem, I'm hearing Audre Lorde's words. I'm also getting like James Baldwin as well, and a little bit of like Nosy Hurston as well. And I'm just like, oh, look at where like they're gonna go with this poem. It's amazing. So can we talk about because you have your book, and the book won't be released until 2022. So talk about like the journey of this poem, this collection, and why start it with this poem, and then what kind of journey do you want the readers to go through as they read?
I love that question because this book has been it's taken so many shapes. It's been ordered in so many different ways. And I arrived at this book through the process of just writing poems. I didn't conceptualize this project. I was writing towards something that I didn't quite see until all of the poems started talking to each other. And so I thought they were talking to each other in a different way. And I actually had this poem, How to Fornicate, at the end. And it's actually the oldest poem in the book. I first started writing this poem 10 years ago. It was different, completely different, a different title, like the shape was different. But it wasn't until I was, writing for years that I realized how much queer desire and this grappling with the like Christian hegemonic culture, especially someone who grew up Baptist. My uncle was a Baptist preacher, grew up going to his church, very religious family. Didn't come into my queerness until I left Wisconsin, which is where I lived and was in college. And so much of my work was grappling with this idea of the queer fugitivity, queer desire, and what that meant for this culture of obedience and cis heteropatriarchy that I grew up in. And so but it was kind of a poem that I tucked later in the book because really I was like, what is my mom gonna think? It's still like, and also like I didn't want to. Sometimes I think queer folks can be really whittled to like bodies, sex, this type of eroticism, when so many of our concerns are also structural about how this empire won't let us live. All these places won't let us live and thrive in very material ways. And so I wanted to resist that gaze at first. But then it really was returning to Audre Lorde and this essay on the uses of the erotic. And I'll read the epigraph that leads this book. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an internal sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. For having experienced the fullness of this depth of feeling and recognizing its power, in honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. And so to anchor the book, to start the reader off in a place of power and possibility, and I felt really important to me. And I think that, as I mentioned even in our introduction, the question was, when do I feel most empowered? And it's when I can locate my desire, when I can locate that yes and no. And so to have such a kind of instructive location of that at the beginning, to foreground like a journey through these poems of what it means to, as individuals, locate our power, so collectively we can locate our power together. It felt really important to start with this poem instead of burying it later, because it really held so many of the core concepts in it. And I didn't want to be afraid of the erotic when I actually fundamentally believe that it can be a key to radical possibility.
Oof, love it.
Yeah. I'm like taking notes over here. Yeah, absolutely. And I love all the voices that, like Rocky mentioned that you kind of hear resounding through your work that you bring into the space. Io mentioned there's a little bit of June Jordan happening in there too. I definitely felt this sense of like kind of like Ross Gay kind of feeling in there. There's so much like introspection, right? And inspection in your work. as well as in a lot of what I was reading in doing research for this, there's a lot of speculation too, right? Of possibilities in your work. And so I'm kind of curious, have you always been a curious and inquisitive person? Like, were you the kid that would just had like a ton of questions for the adults in your life sort of thing? Or where does this come from? Yeah.
It's so funny. As y'all know, I was just at MacDowell. I was there for 5 weeks, and all of us would have meals together in the dining space, and I would ask so many questions because there are all these artists across disciplines, and I found myself at dinner just asking all these questions to the point where people would be like, "So, were you always like this? Like, why are you?" You could be eating your food instead you're asking us silly questions. So I've been reflecting on that because it's something that people have been reflecting back to me. And I'm realizing that although I've always been curious, it wasn't until adulthood that I really had an avenue for that curiosity as someone who grew up in kind of a very patriarchal, be obedient type of environment, as kind of like, here's a patriarch, here are the commands and the rules of the patriarch, and you can have questions about them, but keep them in your head, right? And I kind of followed. I was a very quiet child, a very kind of obedient child, both at home and at school. But I was always a writer. I've been writing poems since I think the first poem that my parents have, I was 5, and so I would always turn to this private language of mine to kind of explore my feelings and my questions. And it wasn't until I could really lean into poetry fully, which was later in high school, and then when I was in college, that's when that internal curiosity, wonder, like that deep introspection was allowed to move outward in a way that wasn't as punishable or as dismissible. That's where I really found poetry was my avenue to agency in so many ways. And so it became a home, though, for all of those curiosities and obsessions. And so that's where they primarily live, because they've been always the first place that I could find safety in being so curious.
So many great things. I know. I'm just like, I love to gush over our guests, and I love to gush over like our poets and what they say, like both in their poetry and how they describe your life, and it really wow. I know that you're saying like this is it was a private language for you to really delve in and explore who you are, but I'm glad that you allowed this private language to be so public, because this is what you were meant to do. That's all I could say. Yeah. So I kind of want to, so when you were, let's kind of go back to the book again. Because again, this book has won so many awards, right? Your eyes are like, I don't know why. I feel like I know when Chibi last week was like, yo, this book hasn't even come out, and it's won like so many awards.
It has won the award.
Yeah, the award.
For first book. And like you said, like the that first poem there is 10 years old, right? So obviously it's been a journey.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm gonna reveal something to you. I didn't even realize this mug was here. Okay, it's kind of embarrassing that I needed this to happen. It'll be a late reveal, mid-story. Okay. But I feel so grateful that this book exists, because there's so many reasons why it almost didn't. Yes, the oldest poem was first drafted 10 years ago, and I have always been a poet, yet the path to poetry has not always been mine, or I've run from it, or I needed to survive within racial capitalism. I remember when I was 19, I was like on campus. I was like the campus poet. Folks knew that that's what I was up to. And so the dean sat me next to Sonia Sanchez at a dinner. And I was too 19 to ask anything of value or to like generate any decent conversation with her. Completely squandered opportunity. But the one question on my mind that I really needed her to answer for me was, should I be studying poetry? Should I commit myself to poetry? Because I come from a family where that is not what you do.
Yes.
I remember coming home from my first year of college, and my dad's friend asked me what I was majoring in, and I didn't even say like literature, English, poetry. I was like, maybe journalism, to soften the blow. And he goes, you will be a doctor or a lawyer or nothing at all. And that was the end of the conversation. And so I was really, though I'd always been a poet, I've also had, the realities of racial capitalism thrown at me. And so I'm sitting next to Sonia Sanchez thinking, this elder, this legend is going to give me permission to move into my poetic destiny. And so when I ask her if I should study poetry, she says, absolutely not. You are Black in America and you need to eat. You need to get a degree in something that will get you a job so that you can survive. And if you're a poet, you'll be a poet and you'll find a way. And she said, I studied political science and like I figured out what I need to do. But no, don't do that. And it was baffling because that's not what I wanted to hear at all. But it was also the truth. And it was the same truth that my family had shared with me. And it's just the reality of what it means to navigate racial capitalism and like without generational wealth or the type of security to be able to necessarily launch into like the least lucrative artistic profession.
Literally.
And so I studied political science and philosophy while also being really involved in the poetry communities. And I was deeply involved in organizing work. And I found myself really committed to writers in a different way. And so for the last decade or so, I've been really supporting movement journalists and other like movement artists and writers in doing cultural strategy work. That's kind of where my political theorist mind went to in a way that still felt like my creative energy was being funneled towards my root passions. But that meant that my daytime, like most of my life, was being allocated towards that work, which was really kind of arduous, and it was where a lot of my energy was going. So poetry had been on the back burner for a really long time. I was always writing and I would send stuff out, but and so I would take workshops, I would be a part of communities when I could, but the center of my life was something else entirely. And then the pandemic happened, and the world stopped in a particular type of way. And I really had a confrontation with the work that I was doing, where I realized that, we're all disposable to this empire in so many ways. Like the reality of that became so clear. And our labor in particular is just completely exploited in so many ways. And I need poetry to survive. I need to be making to feel like I'm living a life worth living. And I realized that I had all of this work that I was deprioritizing, even though it was being in poetry community, reading the work by authors I loved was the only thing that actually like got me up in the morning. And so I had this kind of recommitment to poetry and in the value of my own work, which I kind of put to the side. And I was like, maybe I should just let these poems go. Like maybe I have a book. Maybe this is, and so I started to look at my poems and it became very clear how they were all speaking to each other. I kept thinking like, oh, like it'll take years, like way more years since I haven't been doing this in the traditional MFA type of way. Like I haven't had years exclusively dedicated to this. It's always been something ongoing in the background. So maybe there's no book here. But I pulled the poems together, saw the way they were talking to each other, and was like, okay, cool. Like these Claudia Rankine's judging something, her work saved my life. Don't Let Me Be Lonely actually saved my life. And so there's also something about this time where there's so many poets who I've loved, who Black poets in particular, who are also in these positions in the literary world where they are decision makers in particular ways, where I would want to send my work to them. Like, yeah, that wasn't always true. That maybe wasn't true like 10 years ago when I was in college, right? Like, who would be the decision makers to say yes? Like, who would be these readers to accept these manuscripts in? But I saw that Patricia Smith was judging a contest. I saw that, like there are poets that I've learned from that I love, that I admired, who were saying, hey, first books, we want to read them. And so it was the timing of that, the timing of me arriving at my own, like the necessity of my work. And then the legends who had been guiding me while like before, during, after work, I'm writing and reading and learning, those folks being in positions of like welcome, power, and authority to be like, yes, we're reading for first books. And so I submitted, I was like, who knows what this is? Shoop. And I sent it off just as a practice, because I'm always like, just send things, just let things go. And so it was really surprising to me then to hear that it won the first book award. But it was such a gift to be able to spend time with these poems and to acknowledge for myself that, like, yes, I've been living with these for a long time. They are speaking to each other in profound ways to me. I know I believe in this. So like, y'all will be, lucky to have, I already had this self-belief that like, this is, this work has been living alongside me in a real way. And so it was really the process of getting out of its way. And so much of the challenges of the last few years have made me realize that, especially as queer artists, as artists of color, there is such a potent transformative potential in the work that we're putting out. Like, the entire culture needs to shift. And the entire culture is also designed to tell us that our work isn't worth shit, that it's not actually valuable to anybody else. But I think that's because it is such a challenge to empire. I think that when artists of color, when queer artists are really allowed to make and imagine new possibilities and to name our experiences, that empire requires our silence to continue in that way. And so I had to really let go of the voices in my head telling me that this was not a worthwhile endeavor. And once I got out of its way, I realized that there was like treasure waiting for me. This feels like real treasure to have someone I love, Claudia Rankine, say yes to this manuscript, to be able to work with the folks at Graywolf. My editors have been so amazing. And to actually be able to have these poems that outside of my house and my mind, to be able to share them with readers and to be in conversation with writers I've loved. So I guess that's the journey. Maybe a long one.
That's a beautiful journey, though. Wow.
I love it. Wait, where's the reveal? There was going to be a reveal mid-journey.
Oh. So I totally forgot about that because it's kind of embarrassing. I was so confused that I had won this contest. I would wake up every day and be like, they made a mistake. They made a mistake. And so the brilliant poet, Senam Sheriff, who is a dear love of mine, had to make this mug and send it to me. And it says Claudia Rankine chose me.
I love it.
And as I was revising my manuscripts, like I would use, this became my daily mug that I would use for my morning coffee as I'm revising my manuscript, to kind of to have some self-belief that this actually happens. It's not an elaborate hallucination. And I who am I to dismiss the choice of Claudia Rankine? If she says that this manuscript is worthwhile, then I must believe it.
That is amazing. Amazing.
Absolutely incredible. Claudia Rankine did choose you. I do want to dive into the work that you did as a cultural strategist, because you did that for Song Along, and obviously that has an influence in you, who you are, and your work, your poetic work. But I feel like talking about the manuscript, this is a good moment for another poem. if you would please. If you would please.
Yes.
I would love to. Okay, I kind of want to read. So I said that the oldest poem was around 10 years old, but then of course has a lot of new work as well. So I think I want to read the last poem that I wrote for the manuscript, which I snuck in like a month. Like I like to spend a lot of time with my poems because I am such a reviser. And so this poem, I snuck in like the month I was supposed to submit the manuscript. And there's a series of poems called Against Heaven. There are 5 title poems, and 3 of them are double golden shovels. I kind of have taken liberties with the golden shovel form. And so the last line, the first word and the last word of each line come from songs. And all of the songs kind of interrogate heaven in a different way. And so I had ones that interrogate heaven from like a religious context and a Black liberation context, but there's so much heaven in the love song. There's so much heaven in the like crooning for your boo. And so there's this the Sade song, as y'all may know, Cherish the Day, where she sings, if you're mine, I wouldn't want to go to heaven. And how ridiculous is that? But like also, that's what love makes you do. And then of course, we may know that Belinda Carlisle song, ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, heaven is a place on earth, right? Yes. And so I used those lyrics for my double golden shovel, and this is the last poem I wrote for the book, just to stick with some queer love and sexiness. Against Heaven. If giggle soaked, Henny leaned, young M.A.'s ooh sweat down to its naked ooh. You ripen apart till tender queer innards drip and dangle from fuckboy halves, then baby, were you to waft my way, bright peach begging to cobbler, let heat do what it do. Mine gut pent and wasted, sun born to sweep the orchard of you. If forgiveness, uncoupled from the cross at our jugular, was a song we could know. You and I against innocence in a red karaoke duet of fest mess, then what were slights to scar the verses, cheats to bloody the bridge? The chorus, that's mine. There is a balm in Gilead, sticky resin turned perfume, and we've mucked a grove's worth. I clown for you. Two-step to trap shea buttered lavender spliffed with you, and ooh, wouldn't we get swept out this Apollo, ancestors booing our bits thin heaven. Want a blue blaze snuffed in every realm. To misabolish and refuse your rule is to pawn my only heirloom, blood for Sandman's broom. I toggle fool to fool for a go at mercy. December fists blooming to rainbow strobes, dance floor a place to practice mesh and lace and rope and strap, our binding, our betting on heaven as our circling set to crash, ripping pavement up to rewild earth.
Wow. Wow. As like one of my favorite people would say, a gospel. Really. That truly was. Wow.
I do have to say that one of the reasons that we changed the format of this show to what it is now, where we are here with you while you're reading, is so that we can all see the way Raquel responds to poetry, because it is such a beautiful thing to witness as she takes it all in. That poem. I read a few of the golden shovels that you've put out in the world, and just through my computer across the room. Because they are so good and so visceral, and so much image. Props.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, that wasn't going into a question. That was just what we do, and just gushing on the great work.
No, I just like love queer love, right? I think it is the most radical, most transformative, more like empowering, like liberation there is, right? Just queer love, to see just queers expressing themselves in different ways. It's love it.
I mean,
Love to see my community see.
You used the phrase earlier, queer fugitivity. Fugitivity. Yes, I spelled it right, and my tongue couldn't figure it out. You know, so it is kind of like this idea that, like, for a long time, as queer people, we were kind of like hiding, right? We were on the run from something. We were, you know, like feeling like maybe we were being chased or we were going to get caught. And so this act of celebrating that kind of love is kind of like a coming out of the light. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a queer book because I'm such a queer person, and queerness is such an obsession of mine, because I do locate so much radical possibility in it. And I think specifically, of course, of Black queer fugitivity and what that looks like. And I, you know, especially with that poem, sometimes I'm like, I'm still figuring out how I want to read these double golden shovels, which are like very image heavy, and I want to sing them because they're so rhythmic. And I also know it's just a wash, but there's also something that I locate so much power and sensuality in the sonic. And even when I think about gospel music and like these spiritual sonics that really, you know, the folks around me would completely surrender to this sound and be like taken by the spirit. And I think about what it means to have such embodied experiences feel transformative, and there are places where it's kind of safe to have that transformative embodied experience and like acceptable, and there are places and spaces and bodies where like the modes in which we access that type of transformation and like deep embodied experience is like illicit and like will be disposed of for those portals to pleasure and to transformation. And so when I think about what it is to explore queer desire and to think about queer fugitivity, it also makes me think about what it is to again, always going back to Audrey, like what type of power does that grant? Like once we can access that type of departure from the norm and what is safe, what is deemed safe and acceptable, once that feels like something we can readily do in our own bodies and with other like one or two or three or 10 other bodies, you know, however you want to get down.
Love it.
Free zone.
Right? Then how does that make rebellion in an even broader sense feel more possible? Once we have once we've embodied a sense of rebellion in the private desire that we can partake in, then how can that be made public so that there is those ruptures can exist outside of the privacy of one's bedroom or car or, you know, library, wherever you get down, can exist, right, in other spaces. And so, yeah, to me, throughout the book, there are clear ties I'm trying to make between this, the rebellion of queer desire and this idea of Black queer fugitivity and what it means to be able to practice that type of power and disruption, both in these personal spaces and then in these larger systemic structural realms. The connection feels clear to me, and I'm hoping that the poems, as we travel through them, are also making those connections clear.
No, I think that's amazing. In the vein of that too, let's, you know, of talking about like queer love and then this empowerment of pleasure, right? Because writing is a form of pleasure, right? We can find eroticism and the erotic in that. Can we talk about EchoingIDA, which is a program you help build for Black women and non-binary writers, right? What drove you to create this program? I would assume obviously out of an act of love, but I just want to hear from you. What drove you to create this program, and what is it like? How does it benefit these writers? And you know, what was your vision for that?
Oh, Echoing IDA was the brainchild of Alicia Walters, who is a reproductive justice organizer who saw the need for these brilliant Black reproductive justice organizers to be able to tell truths in really impactful ways in media. And when I came to the program, it was a few years old, and I was, this poet who really believed in the power of the word and what it meant to, and all that language could unlock. And so when I came to the program, there was already this robust community of folks who were like primarily journalists, or moving in media in that type of way. And then over 6 years, I had an opportunity to build with those folks, bring in more people, start to think expansively about the type of language work that we were creating together. But I think that it was EchoingIDA that really located the the idea of pleasure as birthright. It was the writer, especially, there are writers like Jasmine Burnett out of Cleveland, Ohio, Bianca Campbell out of Atlanta, Georgia, these reproductive justice organizers who understood that these fights that were happening are not just about abortion access, but actually over autonomy of our bodies. And when we think about bodily autonomy, especially for Black folks, and then thinking about Black folks who can get pregnant, who have a history in this country of our sexual autonomy and reproductive autonomy being stripped from jump. What does it mean to be able to anchor in the idea of pleasure as the Black person's birthright, that our bodies are not used for labor or for reproductive labor or any other type of labor, but that the body is a site of pleasure, and that is what is deserved. And so these Black queer women and non-binary folks within EchoingIDA were the ones who really grounded me in this, the radical possibilities of pleasure and bodily autonomy as an organizing principle, and then as language and arguments that came into the work that they are writing. And so I remember a retreat that we had, because we would have annual retreats, all the writers would get together and we would build skills and write together. And we had a kind of EchoingIDA manifesto that we created, and one of the top tier agreements, as we're having this rigorous conversation about who we were and what we were up to, was pleasure is our birthright. And so I really, most of these poems were written while I was working with these writers. And, there were some very early ones, but really it was the 6 years together and thinking really strategically about the narrative possibilities for Black organizers and Black movements in this country and Black reproductive justice movements in this country. That's where a lot of the ideas started emerging for this book. And even when I think about everything I've described about Christian hegemony, those ideas became more urgent as we untangle the history of abortion as a wedge issue. Abortion wasn't a wedge issue until it was made a wedge issue by the right, because they could plant this idea in evangelical Christian communities that abortion was wrong. Before they actively did that, when evangelicals were polled, there wasn't this binary between it wasn't as polarized of an issue until it was made one. And it's because within this country we have this meaning-making infrastructure, this Christian hegemonic infrastructure that people have been embedding so many oppressive ideas into. And as a communication strategist and a narrative strategist working with these reproductive justice organizers, we were always thinking about what is the narrative battle that we're in, and what became clear is that it's not just about an issue. And as Audre Lorde says, we don't live single issue lives. So the issue was never so many people are fighting at the issue-based level about everything from abortion to trans liberation, when we have a meaning-making infrastructure that's much deeper than that. And Christian hegemony holds a lot of it. A lot of these ideas can be planted into this foundational meaning-making infrastructure, and it floats up into these issues. And that's done really deliberately. And so, and I don't know, that's a hard thing to tell a bunch of like policy folks that we need to start talking about. It's like, you know, they're like, but we, you know, and so I found myself going to my artwork, my poems, to start to untangle the ways this God in my head, this kind of patriarchal authority who had autonomy over my body and was surveilling me all the time. Like, what are the ways in which those ideas still lived in me, and what would it look like to start to untangle them? So this is a long answer to say that EchoingIDA was such an incubator for the ideas that ended up appearing in my poetry, even though so many of the writers in EchoingIDA weren't poets, but they were all narrative strategists. They were all really grounded in liberation for Black women, Black non-binary people, and were really grounded in the idea of language and writing as a liberatory practice, even if the genres that we were working within were not the poetic variety. I was the sole poet. But the ideas are still in there and informed by all of those amazing writers and thinkers.
I love the way you phrase, you know, how like ideas work in tandem with each other or can work against each other. The way people do, you know, work in tandem with each other or against each other. The way words and language does that. And we have such a great question from Io. In the comment section. Io writes, partly because I've been writing against poems for a few months now, and just yesterday I saw that Frank Bedard has a new book called Against Silence. I'm curious about the title, what each word means to you, if there's anything else besides the resistance/rebellion of against, which could also suggest a kind of leaning on and troubling the idea of what heaven is.
I love this. Because that's right on the money for me. And I think I wrote 5 title poems because there are so many ways that Against Heaven could be read. When I first arrived at Against Heaven, it was very much the oppositional against the kind of, again, the Christian hegemonic idea of Papa God in the sky, you know, and the first Against Heaven that I wrote was very much grappling with that. And the next Against Heaven that I wrote conceptualized the against as like the leaning on that you mentioned, like the touch being important, like what it means to be really resting against this the beauty, power, transformative entity of a heaven that is not celestial, but here on earth that we find in one another. And then there are, you know, other iterations of Against Heaven where, for instance, there's a, you know, one is a blackout poem of a news article that was about Chicago suicides. There have been a rise in Black suicides in Chicago. This article is a 2020 article, but that trend has continued. And so that is also an Against Heaven. What does it mean to be against the idea that the afterlife is a safer or place for Black people to be? Or what does it mean to really claim this earth and all of its possibilities as something that we wish to restructure in a way that allows for our liberation, instead of instead of placing all of our liberatory possibilities in afterlife. There's a poem that specifically grapples with that, using a gospel song, Going Up Yonder. I don't know if y'all know that song, but it has a lyric like, I can take the pain, the heartaches they bring, and the comfort in knowing I'll soon be gone. As God gives me grace, I'll run this race until I see my Savior face to face. So it's this idea that like all of this stuff in this life I can handle, because one day I'll die and I'll go to God, and that's when things will be chill. And I think heaven has been a very necessary and useful concept, especially for Black folks in America, because of the torture that had to endure. And so I wanted to be able to grapple with that reality while still claiming the like righteous idea that also on this earth we can be allowed freedom. And so there are many, through the title poems, I play with different aspects of this against heaven idea, some of it being very oppositional, but some of it being about proximity to the juicy, serene things that we want and need in this lifetime.
Amazing. Again, all your answers.
I can't wait to get my hands on the book.
Yes. I think that is a good way to end our conversation, and also invite you to read one more poem if you can, Against Heaven. Thank you again so much for gracing us, for speaking, for sharing your words. For it has really been a holy experience as like a queer person of color, you know, to just hear you, to be in your presence. And thank you so much. And I know a lot of your work has, you know, very much center like queer, specifically queer Black community. But again, it's nice to hear this beautiful language and to share it, and also to be in community with you like that as well.
Absolutely. This has been such a treat. And I love talking with y'all. Apologies if my answers have been like mini lectures.
No, love it.
Again, it's your show. It is your show.
I'll be here next week. So I think with that, I'm going to end with the first Against Heaven that I wrote. And I wrote it in that the Summer of Uprisings. And this was really directed by that Tourmaline quote that I'll repeat. When we say abolish police, we also mean the cop in our head and in our hearts. Against Heaven. I used to pray to a man-faced God, kept his whip beneath my bed, set alarms for daybreak lashings, pressed white cotton to the flay, made flags of the blood soak, raised them from my window, called this worship, dreamt heaven a jury small as a county where nobody looked like me. Winged bailiffs plucked my cuffs to roast my cousin in a hot coal cage, called this roulette freedom, licking my raw wrists. Witch kill blew my tatters down, peeled me to the blackest jade, remothered me to the squad car blaze, loot and shard my siblings now. Witch kill. Forgive me. I feared the devil's prison, misfaithed the sheriff in the sky. Why? Witch kill. Forgive me, family. I miscountryed. Our swarming anthem of my only homeland. Heaven and hell are the same empire, half-slipped, gasping, clutching our hems, ungoverned by the lie. With fists and flames, we cleave.
Thank you.
Applause for Kemi. Like Io said, thank you, Kemi. You're brilliant, and I can honestly listen to you speak forever, because so much wisdom was shared in this conversation. So much joy, so much hope, so much truth that I'm going to carry for a while. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm already like, I can't wait to like gift your book to friends.
Hey.
Y'all, this has been such a pleasure. Y'all are such wonderful hosts. Your questions were amazing. I tried to resist the urge to ask all of your questions back to you since I just always comfortable the first time. But thank you for being the first spot where I could read from my little book.
I know. What an absolute honor, for real. Like, thank you so much. I just knew it was gonna be great. The moment like I saw your smile backstage, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a great show. This is gonna be great. Your energy is great." Like, yes, thank you so much. Thank you for debuting some of your work with us, and I can't wait to hold your book and your words, and like I said, to gift it to my loved ones as well, the ones who would need to hear your words and to be inspired. And yeah, thank you.
I know we have it displayed right now on the screen, but for anybody that's listening to the podcast after this, can you let people know where they can find you if you want to be found, where they can get more info about your book and all of that fun stuff?
Sure. Yeah. I think I am at the point where I need to be found. I cannot hide anymore. So you can find me at KemiAlabi.com, my first name, my last name.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter. It's my first name, Kemi A, and then my last name, Alabi, Kemi A Alabi, at Kemi A Alabi on Instagram and Twitter.
Love it. Well, everything Raquel said and more. Thank you so much. One more time, people give it up in the comment section for Kemi Alabi, our amazing guest, rounding out season 3 of featured performers. Thank you so much for your time here with us.
A pleasure. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah. Raquel?
Yes.
I am feeling the joy. I'm feeling the love. I'm feeling the rebellion. I feel like I've said this before, but every time that that my husband and I engage in the wonderful acts of fornication, it is an act of rebellion against the status quo. And he is out of town right now, but as soon as we get reunited, we will be rebellion. Fists and so much more in the air.
I love it. I love it. And for what, for those who are not partnered, right?
No.
We can find that beautiful queer rebellion as well with ourselves. Yes, with man-made toys, right? So find that in your bed, your shower, your car. I think that, or libraries. I would think that Kemi was like libraries. I was like, yes, libraries with all this words I'm surrounded by from elders. Of course.
With your partner or partners or just random person whose name you do not know. Or yourself. I am all for it. This has really been a fantastic conversation that really just kind of reinstilled and reminded, I think, us of how important it is for us to live our lives shamelessly and fully, and just to embrace and elevate the parts of us that make us who we are. And in that, hopefully we can, as I feel like Kemi has done, empower other people to continue to live their lives that way. So
it really has. So I know
let's go live our lives.
I know. Let's go. Let's go thank some people. So let's thank the audience. Thank you so much. I want to do a little special shout out to Io, because Io's been since January, really. He's been on.
Since the jump, Io has been a fantastic viewer and watcher, and all of the people that have been watching. Thank you, Io, to that wonderful question. If you are joining us for the first time, or if you've been here before and you just haven't gotten onto it, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The handle is Words and Shh. Even though we only have one more episode this season, we are going to be posting about reminding you of all the amazing episodes that we had this past season, and what's coming maybe for next year. So make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter for all of that fun stuff.
And if you want to listen to this episode or past episodes, you can always find them on YouTube or anywhere that you feel, or you get your podcast, right? This is our third season. Yeah. And we have plenty of episodes for you to catch up on, even if you're bored in the break. Okay. So give us a follow. And
over
coming. Oh,
Over 75 episodes are now currently available on our YouTube or our podcast. And like I think Ebony Stewart says this about poetry festivals, you go for your favorites and you leave with new ones. So you'll definitely find some names on there that you know and love and want to listen to, but then listen to the ones that you don't know, because you will walk away with some new favorite authors. So like Raquel said, like we've mentioned, we're closing out season 3. Next week, we will be back for our final episode of season 3. It's just going to be me and Raquel. Who doesn't love that? But it will be the two of us reminiscing on this past season, this past year, talking about the future, our hopes, our aspirations, what comes next, where we've been, what we've gone through, our favorites, sharing some of our own work as well. And we will also be, for the first time since we started this, raffling off. We had some incredible authors that donated some of their books to be raffled off to our viewers. I have some t-shirts. We're going to be giving away prizes, and the only way that you're going to be able to get those is by tuning in live next week and maybe answering some trivia questions. So maybe between now and then, go back and refresh yourself on some courses. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to give away free shit.
Oh, but I'm so excited. I'm so excited to end the season. It's been a year with you, Tiffany. It's been a pleasure. From Kemi to all our other poets that we've been interviewing this past year. I can't wait. I can't wait to end the season with you. So thank you. And I think that's it. That's all we have to say.
That's it. Until next time, y'all, stay safe out there.
All right, bendiciones all. Bye.